Well, welcome back to the Jesse Lee Falls podcast. I got a very special guest with me today. His name is Jeff Dodder.
Hi, kids.
And I brought Jeff in because Jeff used to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company that he started from the kitchen table. Came up with a concept, built the concept, didn't know what he was doing. Like what I'm always talking about, you guys.
Mistletoe belt buckles.
I'm going to let Jeff talk about his company that he built. This was back in the 80s called ADTS. I'm going to let him talk about that. But before we get into that, just to show you guys that this is what I'm always talking about. Like that's why I started this podcast. I'm always talking about, if you feel a drive and a motivation to do something, even if you don't know what you're doing, start doing.
Just do it.
Jeff is a perfect example of somebody who created a concept from the kitchen table, didn't know what he was doing, had an idea, figured it out, problem solving. And Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about that.
Well, it was a lot of fun. Once upon a time.
And tell us what the business was.
So what happened was I was working in a body shop with my dad. I loved doing creative stuff and doing custom paint work and chopping and channeling and making hot rods was a blast. But it didn't pay so good, not in a small little town. And so my wife at the time, her brother worked at Fred Meyer in their datacom center, and they were doing an expansion. This was back in 1989, and the internet was just coming into play. Prodigy, some people might remember that, had just happened. And instead of sending just text messages, you could actually start to send pictures and it was the beginning of the new internet age. At the time, there were 600,000 people on the entire planet that had internet access. And it was mostly banks and government.
Yeah.
Okay. So as this thing took off, they needed to hook all of these different boxes together, routers and CSU, DSUs, and all of the telecommunication stuff that makes up the internet. And the cables that hooked all that stuff together was insanely expensive. And when you ordered the product, you'd have to wait several months to get the cables to hook it together. So Marta's brother worked in that data center, and he was going, I can't wait. So he went and he bought some wire and he got the connectors, and he came out to our house and said, hey, you guys want to make a little side money? I've got this project that I've got to do. And, we're always looking for a way to make a little extra money. So I said, sure. So we're sitting at the kitchen table and putting these things together. And I'm asking questions. Well, what are these for? What does this do? So Fred Meyer uses this. Do other places use this? Yeah. Okay. So what if I decided to get on the phone and start calling around and saying, hey, if we could build these cables for you and get them to you the next day, would you be interested in them? And they were saying, oh, I don't know if that'd be really a big deal or not. And I said, no, I got a funny feeling. So it took a year from that time to the time that I left the shop to build enough of a base. Mm-hmm. And the reason it took that long was because of the training that it took to get all of our staff up to speed on how to make these things.
Yeah.
And then we were making them so that instead of buying 3 cables and hooking them together, because you had to do that back then, I said, what if we just take the pinouts of these things and go from point to point? And then we can build them in a custom length so they don't have to have a bunch of extra cable rolled together, and they could buy it for like 20 cents on the dollar. compared to what they would have been paying from the OEM manufacturers. So it took off real fast.
Wow.
We went from nothing, and then in October of 1990, we incorporated. And at that point in time, we had gone from zero to $280,000 in sales in little $10 cables. The next year, we were at 1.2. The next year, we were at 2.4.
Man.
We could have grown faster
Exponential growth.
if I could have, and we had 1,200 clients, resellers of our products around the globe. And so it was really exciting.
You guys were selling at wholesale. And
I was selling. I became the OEM manufacturer for several companies. Motorola was one of them. We did stuff for Cisco, Adtran, Kentrox, a company out of San Diego called PCSI at the time, and they changed their name to New Era. And some of the projects that I got to be involved with because of this was very exciting. We were working on a project called the Iridium Project, which is the precursor to Starlink.
Oh, wow.
This was a Motorola product. And so back in 93, I had a laptop, and I'd made a business call on some of my East Coast clients. I'm literally standing at Cape Cod. My feet are in the water. Anybody that's been there, they've got the, you know. Anyway, so I'm standing out there, and I'm placing orders, standing with my feet in the water on my laptop. Nobody else at that time could do that.
Yeah.
This was an experimental unit that I got blessed with. So I literally got to be a part of the growth period of the internet, and that went on until I had a little sidetrack with my lovely ex-wife.
Right.
And at that point in time, we took and made a lot of lawyers a lot of money.
Yeah.
But along the way, in 1995, we were given a plaque by the then governor of Oregon for having one of the top 10 fastest growing and best companies in the state.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We were able to help my hometown recover from the flood.
Right.
And that was an adventure all on its own. But the kick is when this all started, I had no clue. I just had this hunch that something was gonna come about.
And so something else that you brought up right there that I wanted to get into, about 15 years ago when I met you, you turned me on to a guy named Zig Ziglar.
Yes.
And what I've been trying to do with this podcast is help other musicians figure out, like I just did a podcast on scaling, on how to scale up, how to scale up in micro units so that way you don't overreach, because you as somebody who has built a business, that you understand that there's these thresholds where you are going to be forced to expand, otherwise you will die. But also, if you're pretentious or delusional and you try to expand too fast, you'll get yourself into hot water. You'll actually, easily. So there's such a fine line there. But what I wanted to get to is, because you really hit it on the head, is that they had started this thing and they were building this, but what it took was somebody to come in, see the value of what that product was, and then with a creative mind and a sales mind, because without the person who has the sales mind, you were the one that was able to scale that, because you were like, hey, wait a second, why don't we call this company and this company? And you basically solicited to them. And
it wouldn't have been a company. It would have been a project, and that would have been it.
But the reason why I bring up Zig Ziglar is because you taught me something that Zig Ziglar said in one of his books, which I'll never forget, which is you don't sell anybody on anything. What Zig Ziglar talks about is offering cookies.
It's a plate. You're walking around with a plate of cookies.
Right.
It's soft selling, and what
It's
you
soft
just
sells.
say,
Thank you.
Would you like a cookie? And
Yeah.
if they say no, cool. Offer it to the next person.
Right.
Offer it to the next person.
You have and you had a product that was so strong that you like that's all you had to do. You didn't really have to go around selling people or convincing people of something. You were like, hey, we have this thing. It could be, and so I the soft sell has been, that's the way I sell.
It's
like
relationship based. If you
Yeah.
that was
well,
one of the key
and
things.
definitely product based. Like
Well,
the product
right.
has to be so damn good that it really does kind of speak for itself.
We offered
Like cookies.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was some of the things that we did is our product had a lifetime warranty. If it failed for any reason, we would pay to pick it up, and we would overnight.
Oh, you eat the cookie.
Oh, we ate the bad cookies, but we would bring them back because we knew who built each and every cable because of the way that it was marked. We were doing things that hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, you guys were literally inventing. You were, yeah.
We came about the same time that Amazon did, and we were building our.
You were being ingenuitive.
Well, we were doing online sales. We had developed a software and a web page where our people, and they were all nerds, by the way. We're working with electrical engineers, and there's an old joke about that. You know how to tell the difference between an extroverted engineer and an introverted engineer?
I don't know.
An extrovert will look at your shoes when he's talking to you.
Oh,
So
wow.
they didn't like to deal with people, but if they could just have a way in, so we set this up and they could go in and order custom length, custom products, and the order would go out onto the floor and get built. It would order the inventory. When the inventory level came down to it and it hit a certain number, it knew to order the stuff to replace it so that we never ran out of product, and neither did they.
Mm-hmm.
So I had tried to get the rest of the guys. I saw Amazon, they're selling books, and I'm going, people are going to want to buy everything online. And unfortunately, I had some very narrow-minded individuals. So pick your people well when you're building your team. That's also a very important thing.
Something I struggle with still.
And then we set ourselves apart by doing silly things. I painted cars for a living. Custom, people come and get a candy apple color on their car. So I thought, well, all of these cables are beige. I mean, everybody can remember, if you're, a little older, that if you had a phone cord, it was either beige or gray. Yeah. That was it. And I thought, well, this is going to be a real booger when you're setting up a big rack of all of these pieces of equipment, and there's just row after row after row of cables, and that cable is going to something else on the other side of the building. So I said, why don't we make them different colors? So I started
so you can differentiate.
Right.
I mean,
so we set that
genius,
up.
Man. It's so simple but genius.
It really helped us a lot. And then coming up with little adapters and things along the way, it set us apart. And it was a heck of a ride. I enjoyed it for 15 years.
It was a micro solution to a macro problem.
Mm-hmm. It really was.
It's confusing. All the wires the same color, man.
Well, it made a big difference. So we were selling that stuff out every day, and then the copycats started happening. And
yes. Because anytime you have a great idea, that's what's going to happen. People are going to people are just going to start copycatting. Yeah.
So I tell everybody, if you dream it, go do it. Go do it.
Yeah, go do it before somebody else does, because
and that's also in anything that you have to do in entertainment. Mm-hmm. If you're working in the music industry, you don't need to have studio back you. That's old model stuff. With today's technology, with all of the stuff that the internet now provides, you can produce all of your own stuff at the kitchen table, which is where ADTS started, was at the kitchen table.
Right.
And it is the way. It's actually, we're going back to the future with the original inventors that brought everything into play, and then it all blew up into these big corporations. But now, good, bad, or ugly, when COVID hit, it changed a lot of things, and some of it really sucked.
So I guess the point is that you can build it from the kitchen table, and you don't have to, become some subservient, I hate to use the word slave, but that's basically what happens when you sign a contract on the macro side. Those contracts are so geared against the artist that you guys are just better off, man. Like I wanted to do this podcast because I'm trying to protect people, and not just protect people, but educate them so they can protect themselves, but educate them so that way they can take full responsibility and full accountability for their career, and they can do things on the micro level that it really has to do with problem solving. I see a major problem in the music industry, and I can see it on the micro side of it, on the local level. So I can't remember what psychologist said it. I can't remember who said it, but the idea is that where you find problems and where you find things that bother you, well, there's your job. There's your responsibility. Yes. It's like, okay, then go do something about it. And I didn't know really what to do about it, other than when I'm talking to other musicians, I definitely let them know my views about it. But this podcast is really just the best way for me to express to people that, be an entrepreneur, and building it from the kitchen table is so relevant.
That really needs to be driven home in that regard is, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to do this stuff, then really do it. You have to treat it like it's a real job. It can't be kind of a whimsical thing. That was one of the arguments that I had in the early days of the company, when I was saying, well, what we need to start scaling. And I already had a shop. I was fortunate. I'd bought a little place out in Vernonia that had a 40 by 40 metal building. And in fact, I bought it because of the building. The house sucked. But I wanted that because I thought, I need overflow, because my body shop business was doing so good. I had people bringing their cars in from literally around the country. It was kind of fun.
And that's another thing I wanted to point out, is that entrepreneurs pivot. We pivot into other things. We're flexible like that. We don't get tunnel vision. We're creative, and so we can move from from area to area very fluently, and people kind of trip out on people like us, because most people they really are rigid, and they need their structure, and they need their schedules, and
they need somebody to tell them what to do. Whereas what I used to suggest to my staff was, if you come to me with a problem, come to me with two solutions.
They teach us that in the military, which you're ex-military, yes, like me.
Yeah, Air Force, law enforcement, K-9. And
can you hold that thought for a second?
Sure.
Just for 1 second.
That battery's going to die. I'm holding this thought right now.
Okay, so something you just brought up there was, and something I haven't brought up in the podcast yet. I haven't talked a lot about my military experience. I know you're ex-military also, and you were just saying the branches you were in,
Yep.
but something that they teach us in week 1, and I wasn't sure if they taught you guys this,
Oh,
but
yeah.
in week 1, they tell you that, like, you don't go to your superior officers and pose and let them know problems without giving at least one solution.
Correct.
And because you get labeled as a problem child really quickly.
Well, they call you a whiny bitch. I mean, well, at least I'm from the era of Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
So, you know, I literally joined. I didn't wait to get drafted during Vietnam.
And I got through it before they started to get so light on the
sugarcoat where the drill sergeant comes in and tucks you in at night, as opposed to our drill sergeant that came in with a garbage can in the morning. And
not to offend anybody, but not only, like, you know, tucks you in at night, but, you know, comes in wearing a dress. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a different military. It's not the same.
Right.
It's not the same military.
You know,
that
it's
we're
not
used to.
because you know, Klinger was actually a joke back then.
Yeah. That
And,
was
for those of you that know what that reference is to MASH.
Yeah. But anyways, and I don't want to get too off on that, but I did want to bring up the fact that, you know, it's that entrepreneurial spirit of problem solving, and that's what we do. And the music industry has lots of problems. So, you know, hopefully you guys out there, if you guys are just extremely bored, and if you're extremely bothered by some of the things that I'm bothered by, you know.
So I'm going to
pick your poison and then move into it.
I'm going to throw one at you that it kind of sums up. When you're running into those problems, I'm also a Trekkie. And I got some homework for you later, and I'll tell you about it. But it has to do with watching a little video called The Five Captains. And it's William Shatner is talking to all of the other guys that played the role.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so,
but
anyway, it's
fun.
Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that you need to really wrap your head around if you're going to go into business or you're going to do some of this stuff.
And especially the music business, because that it is you cannot go in playing by their rules. You have to go in and you have to change the rules. You have to change the damn game. You have to and I don't mean change the game the way that P. Diddy said it, because, you know, P. Diddy was like, "Oh, game changer, dude."
Yeah,
you know what?
no.
You know what?
He's an
Like,
underwear
I don't even care what you think is a game changer, because I know where you ended up.
What I used to tell my people is, if you can't win by the rules of the game, change the rules of the game.
That's it.
And that was the key. So we didn't know that we weren't supposed to be able to produce products on an ISO 9000 standard.
We didn't know we could.
We didn't
do
even.
that.
We were. And for those of you who don't know, ISO is a series of. It's a structure approach to building things. So it says that when you're going to do this cable, you always use this pin, this connector, this cable, this tool to put it together, so it's all detailed out, so supposedly anybody can come in and do it. We didn't know when we started all of this stuff that what we were doing was actually setting the new standard. Okay? When they came out, because I was living in a place pretty much, you know, it's a little double wide. And when some of the big companies came out and first saw us, and they were, "Wow, we don't know, you guys are doing all of that from here?" And so what I said is, if you want me to have different walls and different carpet, give me the order and I'll make that happen. In the meantime, I'm going to focus with what I have to get you the best product possible.
Yep.
And they gave us the order. Sprint, we were the OEM for Sprint, the phone company. You know, so there were a lot of fun things that came about
sounds like
as a result. But just, if you're going to, and you've heard me say this, if you're going to be a musician, then be a musician. If you're going to be a business, be that business. Get the tools, do it. Don't go out and throw yourself so heavily in debt that you've got to sell everything 90 days later.
But what you're talking about is don't put yourself in halfway either.
Yeah, no.
Because you're like, I think one thing about really successful entrepreneurs is how fast can you take a concept and turn that into a tangible product. It's the time window between concept and product,
right?
Tangible product. That's really how you can gauge who's hyper creative and also hyper conscientious, because you have the creative side and you have the hardworking side. So you have to be able to create and then implement,
yep.
and that's actually a really good sign of an entrepreneur. That's somebody who's getting stuff done, and it has to do with and it really does have to do with that the initial concept and that time window between the concept and the product, and
right.
and it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because most people that we know will come up and tell us all day long about this idea they've had. Oh, I've been sitting on this idea for like 20 years. It's like that right there.
Yep.
And we all know people like that.
Well, I'm guilty.
They just don't have any way. They don't even know how to implement it, or really maybe they just don't have the real motivation of implementing. Because if you would try to implement something, or you try to create something tangible, you're creating that. And we talked about this on the last one. You're creating an ideal that might be too damn high for you to even reach, and then you might actually fail at it, and then you're going to expose your inadequacies to the world, and that's scary.
Well, yes,
so it
and
stops
no,
people. It stops people from doing.
In business, real entrepreneurs end up filing bankruptcy multiple times. I mean, it just it's just the reality.
A process of failure,
and it's a
it's a process of failures.
It's a learning experience.
Yeah.
But Jesse and I have had an opportunity to work together on several different projects over the years, and basically, when we set our mind to it, it is phenomenal how quickly things change.
Yeah, a really good example of that is if you guys go, check out some of the music videos that we've done. Jeff has been in a few of those music videos, and
both on and behind the screen.
Those music videos came together very effortlessly, and they're actually some of the better received music videos that we've done. I mean, just from the comments of people. And something that's really cool is that without you kind of being a part of the band during that time, there was a comedy element to those music videos.
Absolutely.
And that's what gets the really good response from everybody, is the comedic element. People love the comedy, and I think that that's something where a lot of bands kind of go wrong in a way, is that they're trying to present themselves to be so damn cool for school, too cool for school, and it's like that kind of image. It just doesn't appeal to me so much, but the comedy thing has always appealed to me, and I think if you go through some of the musicians who've embraced that, you can really see the genius. I mean, Frank Zappa is probably the greatest example of that. But then all of the mock bands like Spinal Tap and then Tenacious D, and these are real bands, they're real musicians. But
one of the things that I heard set way back when was inside of every comedian is a frustrated musician. And that's
to me that
really
sums
true.
It all up. And I've even heard like Seinfeld talk about this with other comedians, that there is something of some kind of like-mindedness between the comedians and the musicians, because the comedians and the musicians they always seem to get along.
Yeah.
But they don't really get along with the actors because the actors are completely different. It's just
for
a
the
different
most part,
type of person.
You always,
but for some reason, the comedians and the musicians always seem to get along, and
for the
it's like
most part,
we're kind of alike. We don't really know why. And I heard Seinfeld say that, and I was like, man, that is a brilliant observation.
To be honest, it's because we don't think like other people, and it's not. I mean,
think it's also because we have to perform. We perform in small clubs, and we have to like literally present ourselves to be genuine and authentic to really get a crowd to receive us or actually accept us. You can't fake it. You
have to be yourself. I'm going to roll back in the ADTS days. I was working with all of the guys that wore pinstripes. So now what you're seeing me wear, this is what I'm most comfortable in. You've known me forever, and tie-dye is just where it's at for me. And so I would go to these corporate meetings in jeans and tie-dye and some kick-ass Nike shoes, and this is 94, 93, 92, way back, and they would look at me, and I'd say, if what I'm wearing is more important than the service that I'm providing, we're not going to be your cable house. And I would just get it out of the way.
That's brilliant.
I would just get it out of the way.
This is why I think that's such a brilliant move. Man, you're really tapping into people's psychology right at the get-go. Like how shallow are you people that you're going to judge me based on what I wear,
right?
And you're going to judge my product based on what I'm wearing,
right? And how I look. Can't you cut
see
my hair?
That has nothing to do with the price of tea in China,
right?
And you're exposing them like it's kind of like in a way you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to expose your guys' biasness and all your bigotry.
Well,
maybe that's
true.
kind of extreme.
It's a very shallow. I went through this in high school too, because right now my hair is starting. Part of it is starting to grow back out, but as you know, my hair used to be right down middle of my back.
It's like, who's going to judge you based on that, or who's going to look at it as an attribute?
Well,
like, hey, you know what? This guy's kind of fun.
In high school,
that's an attribute.
1973, I moved out to Vernonia with my parents moved out there, and here I am, this city boy with long hair, and they were always picking on me and bullying on me. And the principal said, if you just get a haircut, they'd like you better. And I looked at him and I said, so Art, you're telling me that they're so shallow that they're going to judge me because of the length of my hair? Okay. So I went home that night and I shaved my head. I mean, all the way down. And then I painted my boots silver, and I happen to have those boots on tonight, as a matter of fact.
That is something.
Right. So I went to the school, and it was a basketball game that night. And when I walked into the gym, a couple of my buddies were on the team, and they were coming down court dribbling. And they looked up and they saw me, and they literally stopped. And the whole crowd got quiet. And you could hear the ball just kind of bouncing down until it got down to the auditorium and hit the edge of the stage and started to roll back. And then everybody just went, wow! Mm-hmm. Just be yourself. You've got to be comfortable in what you're doing. Yeah. And that's
like, dude,
it's so important.
Because if you try to go outside of being yourself, it comes off so contrived and so fake. People like here's another thing I haven't ever really said to you guys yet is, man, do not underestimate your audience.
True story.
Do not underestimate your audience. Treat your audience like they're smarter than you are. I know that's a hard thing to do sometimes, but you know what?
Actually, what
they know quality, and when we try to like sneak something by them that's not quality or authentic or genuine, man, they smell bullshit, man, from a mile away.
One of the things that Zig Ziglar said to me was, just keep in mind that everybody wants to feel understood and valued.
Yes.
So if you treat your clients and you treat yourself and you treat your staff that way, it'll go a long way.
Perfect opening, because this is what I wanted to get down to. Let me take a little break for a second.
Okay.
Perfect. That's perfect.
The other thing that he said.
Oh, hold on. Let me.
Hold on, I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
So the other thing that Zig said at that time was, if you help enough people achieve their goals and their success, you will achieve your own.
It's the Adam Sandler philosophy, dude. That's what I'm trying to do. I want to bring my friends along. Like, dude, nobody wants to be successful and be up at the mountaintop by yourself, man. It's cold up there.
True story.
It's lonely, man. It's like that is not. And this is bringing me into the main thing that I did want to talk about, because I told you guys that I was going to do a podcast on P. Diddy. Well, I recorded one, and to be honest with you, I wasn't really happy with myself, because I kind of felt like I was going down a very negative road, and it's because it's very negative stuff. But this really brings me full circle to what I wanted to talk about, as far as the way we treat our band members or employees or clients or whatever. And you, as somebody who had a very successful business, somebody who was working with other successful companies, other successful people, CEOs, I mean, here's the thing that is so jacked up about P. Diddy. What kind of a malevolent psychopath do you have to be such a parasite on people the way that P. Diddy is and was towards his people? Because as far as I'm concerned, he was signing people, so those are his employees and his clients, however you want to look at it. But he didn't treat them like clients. He treated them like pieces of meat that he could just he was a parasitic. He's a parasitic psychopath. Now, I was actually, in a way, I was saying, originally, I'm kind of glad that this happened to P. Diddy, not because of my own malevolence or my own hate towards him, but because this is the kind of malevolent behavior I've been talking about, why I don't want anything to do with the macro side of the industry. And so he really validated me as far as why I've started this podcast, why, that there's a greater enemy here that I'm trying to fight. And P. Diddy is the absolute personification of everything. And now I get that that's the hip hop world, that's the pop world, but that's the macro side of the industry. And
it's the entirety of and it's sad. It's the whole entertainment industry.
I guess my question to you, though, is that somebody who's been at very high levels, you've been a CEO, you've dealt with CEOs, and it's like, how rare is it that you actually come across somebody that's such a malignant, narcissist, malevolent, parasitic psychopath?
They're out there.
I mean, but that's got to be a super rare thing to come across, because here's the thing about running a legitimate business, is that to run a legitimate business successfully, you have to be able to build relationships on trust. You have to have faith. You have to
all of that.
You have to be able to move forward in good faith with people, and you cannot do that. Obviously, P. Diddy is a representation of that you try to use people and be a parasite that eventually it's gonna come back on you.
There's a lot of sharks in the water. It's a very.
But do those people get exposed, Do they just keep get to coast along? Do you notice that?
At some point in life they get exposed, but a lot of them, they just keep on keeping on. It's a very cold world out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tried to do was walk my walk. And that involved a lot of things. So I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. But I decided I wanted to treat people the way that I wanted to be treated.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, how could he get away with this for so long? I mean, how can somebody get away with something like that for so
because
freaking long, to be so parasitic on people?
Because they didn't they took their eye off of the real prize. And you've heard me say this because, over the years we've gone through quite a few different players. Mm-hmm. And you've heard me say it. I'd say, what's your motivation? What's your motivation? And usually they'll fall by the wayside.
I've seen it. When we first met, you asked me that, and you said, well, I ask everybody this, and well, what's your motivation? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Something that a lot of people don't even, sometimes I don't think we really ask ourselves that. And that's not, that's such a fundamental question to ask yourself, because you'll find some answers that you didn't realize were there. You'll find some answers that maybe you don't want.
Well, and see, that's the important part, because I ask it because I want to find that out at the very beginning of the
What's
process.
amazing to me is that I've seen you ask people that,
mm-hmm.
because now I know, I know your tactic, and so I've been aware of it, and I've seen you ask people that, and it's amazing how, I would say 80% of the time you get a deer in headlights.
Right.
I mean, that's how rare it is that people actually know what it is they're trying to even do.
Right.
Like, a lot of us are just like going through well, we think we know why we're doing something, but I question myself all the time. Like, I don't know. I think a sane person, if you're trying to make a career out of music, you need to stop and ask yourself sane questions, like, why am I doing this? And if you're not questioning yourself every once in a while, it's like, man, you might kind of be in a delusional state.
Well, that's exactly what it is most of the time they were in a delusional state. And I asked that question because if you're going into the music industry, you better have yourself some other talent that you can do, because
and you better be made of steel.
Oh God, yeah, and be ready to be shunned and blacklisted.
You gotta have the thickest skin, because you have to be able to be told no and keep going.
Yep.
You have to, and that's a big part of sales. Sales is, you don't get knocked down by no's, because you know that you will eventually get to a yes. That's a very optimistic mentality and standpoint that you have to have, and that is not man. People don't deal with rejection well. We don't.
So what and again, I was very lucky as to who some of my teaching mentors were, and if you get told no, then that means that you haven't presented all of the benefits that you're bringing to the table. You haven't showed them the value that they're getting for the product that you are providing.
Not only that, but maybe you're not asking the right questions, because you have to ask people questions like, what actually do you need?
Well,
because if you don't know exactly what their needs are, how the hell are you going to meet their needs? What are you going to go in there and shotgun troubleshoot?
Well, you can do that. I used to
you got to ask them questions sometimes, right? Like, if they're giving you no's, okay, well then what is it that
what you want to do is ask the question, for a solution that you have for a problem that they don't know that they have yet.
Well, that's
You ask the question, and then they go, well, wait a minute, yeah, I did. You're right. That's just a glaring thing. And how many of them can we get? And it's the same thing in music. It's the same thing in any industry.
Yeah, so we should be out there trying to solve people's problems. And when it comes to whose problems are we trying to solve, well, we should be trying to solve the problems of the club owners, because the club owners are, I mean, look, you guys, I think we all know that the clubs are suffering really bad. And I don't know if this is just I don't know if this is like an evolution of, I'm not really sure what to think about this, but we've all seen a lot of music venues close down in the past decade, and it is very discouraging. But maybe there's just things that bands and musicians aren't really doing and supplying for these venues, and to really keep them going. I'm not sure, but there's enough problems in the music industry on the local level that we should all be trying to think of ways to solve.
Well,
if we can just start solving some of the small problems, then maybe we can get to the bigger problems.
One of the reasons I ask, though, why, what's your motivation, is because this industry is one that depends on people's discretionary spending. And that means when times get shitty,
the entertainment's the first thing to take a hit.
That's the very first thing to take a hit.
Absolutely.
So, I started doing music at a very early age.
Well, then we should be creative to figure out other venues to play, and so it's like it's a constant, like, okay,
regardless of whether or not there's money involved, I still write, I still produce, and it's not a what I do anymore. It's a who I am.
Yeah,
and because we've had that discussion. I'm
always talking about the long game, that you cannot be in the music thing with a short game mentality.
Yeah, next year I'm going to be a millionaire, and I'm going to be at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Although,
another thing that I keep telling everybody is, like, you shouldn't be trying to even be a millionaire. Why don't you become be a thousandaire
first,
and then we'll talk.
You got to learn how to walk before you run.
That's right. That's
right. When I started ADTS, I had no idea what was going to happen.
And I'll tell you what, like, as long as I'm the one that's making the things happen for me, and I don't have middlemen in my life, these parasitic psychopaths, I will be happy being 100-aire.
Right.
Because, you know what I'm saying? Because
don't sell your soul for rock and roll, kids. That's what he's saying here. Don't
seriously.
Sell your soul for rock and roll.
And every damn dime that you make, man, make sure that you're the one that's making it, because that's the empowerment. I just can't go through life feeling like I am depending on somebody. Now, there have been times in my life personally where I've been homeless, I've been displaced, and the only thing that helped me through those times were my band members, is because of the friendship and the community of band members that I had, and I was able to sleep on couches, and they were the ones to get me through that. And Jeff is one of those people, and
well, that's when I brought you in as the first member of the Tortured Souls Club.
Yeah, that's right. But the whole point is that we have to be able to build those strong relationships, because that is what gets us through bad times. And if you've ever been displaced or whatever, gone through a divorce or anything like that, the depression and discouragement and everything, and you gotta pick yourself up by your bootstraps and all that stuff. I mean, it's all true.
That's great, as long as you got boots.
But yeah. And I guess the whole point to that is that this is the hardest thing that you could possibly try to do. But if you're going to do it, don't be dependent. Don't be dependent, because it's so deflating, especially for I mean, if you're a man, I'm speaking to the men right now who are listening, that you just don't feel like a man if you're, on somebody's nipple. And I don't want to be.
I don't
I
know.
don't want to be
I'm
on the
kinda-
government's nipple. I don't want to be on a music label's nipple. I don't want to be controlled. I mean that's really, and because I want to answer that question. What is my motivation to do this? Because it's such an important question. So I'm going to put myself on the chopping block. The reason why I do music is because, for one, I am a creative person, and music is basically the medium that I find that I can express myself the best, and not to mention all the other benefits that come with music. But the main reason why, and I learned this from Derek Sivers, who's the creator of CD Baby. He said that when somebody goes into business or does something that they want to do, it's that question, that what's your motivation? He says that there's actually 5 different motivations for doing something. One is money. One is fame. One is leaving a legacy. One is being creative. And the other one is, I'll have to think of it. Oh, and freedom. So here's the thing. You've got those 5 elements of why you do something, but here's the thing. You have to pick what are the top 2 out of those 5 that are actually important to you. This is the thing that I use. This is the scale I use to answer Jeff's question, is what is my motivation for doing music? I do things because of the freedom. Oh.
Is the camera doing a bad thing?
All right. So the reason why I do music, or why I am an entrepreneur, is because of freedom and creativity. So the fame, the money, and leaving a legacy are not the priorities to me. That's not why I'm doing it. And a lot of people, and I've said this before, because the name of my band is the Jesse Lee Falls Band. People think that it's an ego trip on my part, that that's what is important to me, is like I'm trying to leave some kind of a legacy. It's like, and I've explained it to people that I do it to protect myself. I do it to protect myself, and that way, every time the band breaks up, I don't have to come up with a new band name and new branding and all that stuff. It's a total pain in the ass. And I'm the songwriter. So
Right.
So other than that, the reason why I do this is because I value my creativity and I value the freedom.
Right.
And those are the reasons why I even get into to do any business, because for one, I get the inspiration, the creative inspiration, and I feel moved to do it. And Carl Jung talks about how people don't have ideas have people, that we're actually possessed by our ideas. Mm-hmm. And it's totally true, because that's how I work. I get an idea, and it's like, that's what I was talking about. Like I know how to come up with an idea and implement it into reality fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there it is,
Well, we've worked on many projects over the last, it's been 2008. It's been since 2008.
2010?
No, like actually it was 2008.
2008? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's 2008. Oh, God, hold on. Cut.
Yeah, it's all good.
Hello. Hey, what's up? Oh, pretty good. I'm out at the coast right now. Can I give you guys a holler back? Yeah. Okay. I'll love you. Bye.
So this has been a really great conversation, and I want to start wrapping it up, but the getting back to the whole P Diddy thing and how somebody so slippery and malevolent can skate by for so long without anybody calling them out on it, and so many people that have been involved, and really just this the shadow side of Hollywood, man. It's like
I can answer this one for you. I really believe that it has to do with a couple of things. One of them being everybody, sadly, likes to do naughty things. For example, when you're in high school, you want to go out and you want to smoke a cigarette, or you want to go out and have a beer before it's legal. Okay, so and I'm just using those two examples. Right.
Taboos have value.
Right, and because it's exciting, you get the adrenaline rush, and entertainers thrive on an adrenaline rush. It is a part of the deal.
If they're not doing something naughty, they don't feel like they're doing anything at all.
Well, and it's kind of, there's this mysticism where there's this persona that rock and roll people or music people are all bad boys.
It really is just sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
And that's why I'm so damn boring. I'm like, business, 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 and everybody's like, I don't want to be in your band.
True, sad but true. There's been many a gig that it was like, okay, so who's the bass player this hour?
I mean, I've struggled with my own alcoholism. I mean, it's not a good thing, man. It's not a good thing to be resentful, get drunk, and then start unloading on your friends and band members.
So I guess
I don't suggest it.
No, that part not so much. But if you do want a life of debauchery, this entertaining industry will give you plenty of opportunity for that.
However, I tend to see it really kind of works the opposite these days, man. It's not, you don't have these backstage Bettys hanging out, man. Like, I mean, you got to be pretty top dog rocking it,
Betty, leave.
Yeah. I mean, like, as far as like being on the local scene, it's I mean, we would like to think that, and some of us do okay. Some of us do okay in that field, but it is not. It really is not sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I didn't bring it up to make it like, oh golly, I want to go do that now.
I would say these days it's a little bit closer to, it's not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's more like alcohol, masturbating, and Netflix.
I don't have Netflix.
So it is not the same industry that it was in the 80s.
Well, especially when they, start taking Epstein Island down, and they took P. Diddy World out of there, and Michael Jackson and his little circus. It's the sad thing is, though, it's because of that debauchery and all of the money.
And it's like, we got to put the money somewhere. We got to do something with this money.
So
and the
you're
excitement,
selling your soul. If your motivation is that's what you want to do, understand that you are selling your soul.
Well, that's the thing, man. Like, okay, we all like to party, but like, here's the thing. It's like, that's all that dude did, as far as they make it look like. All that dude did was just throw parties. And I'm sorry, man. I'm in my 40s, and like, that just doesn't even look attractive.
No.
I mean,
well,
like, I have a hard time even having like a couple people come over to my house after the gig. Even just having a couple people over, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm ready for you to leave. I mean, it's like,
I get it. I'm 70.
I'm just like, how can this guy be in his 50s and be such a fucking child that it's like, dude, you have to have a party every night, don't you? You got to be butt fucking somebody every night, don't you?
Well, Johnson & Johnson just had to lay off like 20% of their staff because
I'm gonna have to edit that one out.
The baby oil supply that he was buying every month was insane. 1,000 bottles a month. Wow.
Which, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up, but I've got one little surprise for you guys. And I wasn't sure if I was going to mention it on this one, but I figured that, I'm feeling pretty good about it. So Jeff has always been really good about helping me with making music videos. He's been in a few of them. And so because we both have an affinity for comedy and music, something that we've been talking about doing for about a decade now.
True story.
We've been talking about doing some sort of a comedy skit show. And it can be kind of dangerous to, muck up the waters when you're trying to cross-pollinate between comedy and music. And so what we're going to do is, if you guys, keep tuning in for the subscribers, we are going to start creating comedy skits. We're going to come up with our first episode. And that's actually why he's here today, is we are going to actually try to film one of these skit ideas. And, I'm always telling you guys, I'm always talking about, the entrepreneurial side of this, the creative side of this, and pivoting. And that's kind of what I want to keep doing. I want to see how many areas I can pivot into and keep it all under the same umbrella of, the funky kids at play.
Interestingly.
And so that's kind of where we're going to take that, and it's going to be really exciting to show you guys that, and make sure that we don't go stepping outside of our lane, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that the comedy has to do with the archetypes and the stereotypes of musicians. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to really like it. And
most of the people in the grocery line, or when we're at Kentucky Fried Chicken or wherever we are and these things hit, and we just start doing it in public.
Yeah.
And
it's usually very weed fueled. But there's something about it
involved.
That it just, laughter is so important. Comedy is so important. Being creative is so important. If you guys can create some comedy and be really creative with your music videos, and just don't be afraid to be goofy.
Right.
Man, there's real value in not being afraid to be goofy, because if you guys are just so focused on trying to look cool, dude, here's the thing about musicians. We are so not cool.
We're nerds.
I mean, behind closed doors, we're all pretty nerdy. We're all pretty much music nerds. That's what we do. We're introverts, but we have to go out and we have to balance that with some extroversion, and that's what we do. But are we cool by nature?
No,
Nobody is.
Nobody's cool.
Nobody's cool. And so embrace your uncoolness is what I would say, because I gotta tell you, the goofy music videos we've made seem to be the ones that really go the furthest. I mean, when we really are not concerned about, we're just not concerned about looking cool at all.
We just want to have fun.
Yeah.
And see, fun is contagious. And when people go out to
That's
see
why
your
we
band,
go as
they
funky
want,
kids at play.
They want to be entertained. But
they also want to be reminded that they're kids too, and I think that's why
what I'm talking
funky
about.
kids at play is just, it's going to remind people, embrace your inner child. There's, and not to get all biblical on you guys, but there is a quote that I keep running across. I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and there's a quote that he pulled out from the Bible the other day, which was basically only people who can return back to a childlike nature can get into heaven.
Yeah.
And that was something I'd never heard before. And it was like, oh, well, there it is, man. Yeah. It's like, no wonder. It's like we're not trying to be immature, but there is something about the natural process of play that is they said that that's the antithesis of power.
Yes.
Or seek power. It's actually the antithesis of seeking power is free play.
That's what I did.
Because there's cooperation
at ADTS,
and there's rules that everybody's playing by.
We played all the time. We had the little balsa airplanes that were, throwing through the warehouse while people, or I'd get up on the mezzanine with a laser pointer and point it down on the hands of the workers when they're working, and they'd freak out, and cable going everywhere. And they probably didn't beat me up because I was the boss, but it was always a something. We were always pranking each other, doing things, and I had 50 employees, and we just kept it loose and
keep it loose. Keep it fun.
It was an amazing ride, and in music, I can't stress this enough. Make sure that your bandmates are on the same emotional and mental wavelength as you are. Don't bring somebody in that's an old curmudgeon, and don't base what they are by their appearance. But it's really important because there's going to be times when you're going to have to do some hard work, and maybe they're going to complain, maybe they don't want to do or whatever, but they can hamstring your success.
Yeah.
I had to fire several of my founding partners
and family members.
Yeah. Oh, it was great fun.
That's really fun, you guys.
So it was a wonderful learning experience.
And that's what being in a band is. I mean, every person that I end up having to let go is a friend of mine. So that's all I've done is fire friends. And guess what? I don't have a lot of friends anymore.
It got to the place where
it sucks. It sucks, man. It's not fun. You're trying to build something, and it's like your friends are getting in your way, and you're just like, dude.
Well,
like,
how many
like
times
you'll let
did
it
you
happen?
say-
You'll let it happen a few times, but it's like, dude. Eventually, it's like you're a problem, man. And it's like I love you. You're my friend, but are you my friend? Because if you're my friend, why are you being a problem? And so,
I got a kick out of it.
Friendships go away.
I got a kick out of it. It get to so tense at times. And Jesse had come to me and says, I got to let him go. He says, you go fire him. And I says, so I got to be the Donald. You're fired.
He did it. He did it once or twice for me.
3 or 4 times. Five or 6 times.
Don't even get me started on that, man, because I'm just glad my ex-wife isn't here, man. She was really, we really had good cop, bad cop going, man. My ex-wife, Trish, and Trish, I hope you watch some of these, but I love you, girl.
Love you, Trish.
But man, she was the executioner.
No, she'd make a voodoo doll of your ass.
No. But anyways, you guys, hey, thanks for joining us. This was such an awesome conversation. I'm glad, Jeff, thank you so much for coming out. You're somebody that I wanted to have on. As soon as I came up with the concept of doing this podcast, I was like, dude, you got to come on my podcast.
Well, you've been riding me for a while. I've been battling a few, as you know, health issues. I'm trying to get back up because I miss what we were doing. And so I'm hopeful that over the course of the next few months, things will just get better and better.
And you guys stay tuned, man. I'm really excited about starting to do some comedy skit stuff, and that's something that we've literally talked about for a decade. The podcast was something that I talked about doing the podcast for about 2 years. So it took me about a year and a half to finally start doing it. But the idea of pivoting into comedy from music, we've had to really go over these ideas because we don't want to alienate. I don't want to alienate people, and I don't want to.
I do. I like politically incorrect.
I don't want it to be such a hard pivot that it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't match up with the music at all. So we've been trying to comb through our idea of how to bridge the marketing, which we've talked about before.
Incendiary, that's the word of the day.
So it's all about how we can bridge this stuff on the marketing side so that it makes sense to the viewers, and we're not alienating the fan base, and we're not steering, like, it's kind of like you really want to alienate your fan base, go from music into politics. So that we're not trying to do something that's so extreme that we're just gonna absolutely lose the fan base or the audience that we're trying to build. So that's going to be really exciting, and I want to be able to show you guys that, and I'm excited for us to create the first episode and finally put it out there, because like I said, this is a decade in the making, you guys. So that's why we're so excited about that.
So I'm not allowed to announce that I'm running for Emperor of the North now, and we're taking donations.
Oh yes, that's totally welcome. We need a new emperor.
Yeah, politics suck. I just want to be emperor.
Yeah.
In fact, we should make it so that everybody in the country gets to be emperor for a day. And you get to, but you don't get the keys to the nukes. You just get to play emperor, and that's it.
Man, that we are going to get absolutely nothing done. Oh, well, I guess it'll be just like the past 4 years. Okay, guys, well, we'll see you later. Have a good one.